Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mark Sparks and welcome to the Men's Room interview series. Today's guest, none other than Frank B. Kermit. Frank,
How you doing?
a pleasure to have you here again, man.
Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure to see you. All right guys, we have something special in this interview because we're going to look at we call this a definitive guide to first dates. And Frank, you're going to take us through where to go, how to act, and what to talk about. 3 big things on a first date.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to put it in your hands. Where are you going to start with?
Okay, let's start with how to act.
Okay.
First and foremost, when you're on a first date, it's not about just being yourself. It's about being your best self. You are expected to put your best foot forward. That doesn't mean you lie. That does not mean you brag. It means you go in there with the knowledge that you're going to put your best features into those conversations and into those behaviors on a first date.
Okay. Now, how do you do that? You said it's not about lying and it's not about bragging. And I think those are the 2 go-tos for people when you say, be the best you.
Well, okay, let's start off with the ability to tell a story from your own life that best presents you. Whether it's a good story from your life or a bad story from your life, you want to tell the story in a way that will show off your best features, even if it was something that was horrible to you.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Okay, in my own life, I got stood up at my prom. Probably one of the worst experiences in my life. Now, I can talk about it like this. I got stood up at my prom, and I was embarrassed, and I was humiliated, and it was like one of the worst things that had happened to me at that point. Well, if I had continued the conversation that way, I would have put a real damper on the date.
Right.
However, if I talk about it like this, yeah, sometimes bad things do happen. I got stood up at my prom. And although it was a bad experience, I learned a lot from it. I learned to judge people based on their actions, not just their words. I learned to become a better judge of character. And I really learned to value a person based on whether or not they stick to their word. Right now, I have just communicated that even when something bad happens to me, I can learn from it, I can survive it, and I will use that experience to make me a better and stronger person. So I am showing you 2 sides, because the fact is, I was hurt when I was stood up at my prom. I was humiliated in front of my graduating class. But I looked at the positive aspects of that same story, and that's something I would communicate on a first date. So that's one of the rules of how to act on a first date.
Right.
Other things include things like your first date has to have a minimum of 3 locations. You want to make sure that you meet up with a girl in one location, you go to a second location, and then finally a third location. Here's the rule that goes with it.
Okay.
In each location, you can have a main topic of conversation, but you're not allowed to take that same topic of conversation into the other 2 locations.
Formula.
Exactly. Now,
Right.
Here's why. Let's say the topic of conversation is superheroes. Right? Topic of conversation. Hey, what's your favorite superhero? Whether it's based on a movie, a comic book, a real hero in life, a hero from history, whatever the case is. If you talk about it at the first location, you meet up at a coffee shop. And you talk about it at a second location, you're going to transition to a bookstore. And you talk about it at a third location, ideally you would go to your place. By the end of the date, even though you're both having a great conversation about superheroes or heroes all the way through the date, all she's going to see you as is that hero guy. And that makes you boring, one-dimensional. You might be thinking, hey, I had a great time because I talked about something I loved. But that's all you talked about. There's no variety there. There's no intrigue. There's no mystery with that. You get categorized in her mind as, oh, a really nice guy, someone I can keep as just a friend. However, let's say the topic of conversation is superheroes, and you do that in the coffee shop. When you transition to the bookstore, the next topic of conversation could be favorite authors and most inspiring books, and you talk about that in the bookstore. Then you get back to your place, and the topic of conversation, at least the main topic of conversation, could be world travels based on the different knickknacks you have in your place representing the trips you've been on. Here's what happens. Consciously, we all know that this is the same date. Subconsciously, it feels as if you've been on 3 dates because you've been in 3 different locations and you've kept the conversations so distinct that it will be remembered over the long term as having been on multiple dates in the shortest amount of time possible. This happened with me with one of my girlfriends. Our first date, we met up in a bookstore. We then went into a shopping mall, walked around the mall, got some ice cream, and then we went to see a wrestling show in a movie theater. And by the time that we were in the back of that movie theater watching this wrestling show, we were in a passionate makeout session. This is a girl who had already indicated to me beforehand, listen, I really move slow, I don't move fast, don't expect anything. And I had said, well, listen, I have no expectations. I'm here to get to know you just like you're here to get to know me. Whatever happens, happens, and that's fine with me. Let's just take it naturally. Months later, we would be in a conversation, and she says, hey, do you remember that time we went to the wrestling show in the movie theater? I said, yeah, I do, actually. It was our first date. She says, no. We were dating for a couple of weeks by then. And I said, no, that's not what happened. And then I recounted the fact that it was 3 different locations on a first date. So she even remembered it as 3 distinct dates.
Right.
And anything you can do towards that goal is a good thing to do on a first date. It could include things like, let's say you take her back to your place and you're going to make it a point to change your shirt. If you're cooking dinner together, wear a funny chef's hat and an apron for the kitchen. Even changing your wardrobe for each location further reinforces the idea that you've had multiple dates with the same person. And you go as far as maybe changing your wardrobe, changing where she's sitting, changing the view that she's facing at each location. Subconsciously, even though consciously we know it's a first date, subconsciously it feels like multiple dates.
Right. Wow, that's golden. So what else we got in terms of locales and?
Well, in terms of locales, with each location that you go to, you have to rate it. Now, there's 5 things that we're going to rate them on.
Okay.
First thing is cost. First dates must be inexpensive. There's no way around that. If the first date you go on happens to cost you maybe $300 or $400, you're setting an unfair precedent because you are misleading her to believe that every date you're on is going to be a $300 or $400 date.
Right.
You're better off going to a McDonald's than going to a fancy restaurant. Now, that isn't because, you're trying to turn her off or you're trying to present yourself as being cheap. The idea is it's a first date. She hasn't earned the $300 date yet. If you want to spend $300 or $400 on a woman in your life, by all means, go for it. Make sure she earns it first.
And that's a big point.
Okay? And you don't do that on a first date, because again, if you go on a first date to try and impress her, to try and brag, the only women you can attract with that are women who want to use you. However, if you meet up for a coffee date, take a walk in a bookstore, take a walk around the block, have a picnic in the park, you're not trying to buy her attention. You're sure as hell not going to impress her with your money and lifestyle. So if she likes you, she has to like you for you, not what you got.
It's a great way to qualify, even if there's a worthwhile, if it's worthwhile having a second date.
Exactly. The fact is, once you finish up at that first location, she might say something to you that you recognize as a red flag, and you want to get the heck out of there.
Right.
Which actually brings us to one of the other criteria of a first date. There has to be an easy out.
Okay.
An easy out. That means that you have a way to get out of there. This also includes things like find your own way there, find your own way back. Are you dependent on her for a lift? Is she dependent on you for a lift? Is it something where once you're in the place, it's not easy to get up and leave? Maybe it's, let's say it's a theater show, and the two of you have seats right in the middle row, where if she says or she does something that you don't like, you just can't get up and walk out without a lot of interference. you want to stay away from those type of places for a first date. At the very least, stay away from them from the first location on a first date. Your first location on a first date, there has to be a way where if she does something to completely disrespect you, you're up, you're out. Here's an example. You're on a first date, you're at a first location, you're in a coffee shop. Her cell phone rings. Now she picks it up and wanting to find out who it is. Hey, maybe it's an emergency, we don't know. And she's still talking on the cell phone about 5 minutes later, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs like a moron. And she says things like, oh no, I can talk. An easy out means you get up, you go to the counter, you pay for your coffee if you haven't already paid for it, and you walk out the restaurant and leave her there. There's no point in ever tolerating any disrespect. That's why you want an easy out in any location you structure on a first date.
Right.
Okay, now here's another rule that I follow and that I teach for first dates.
Okay.
You always go for a kiss. Always. No matter how bad the date went. If you made it to the third location and you haven't ended up having sex, and you're at that point where it's the traditional time for a goodnight kiss, even if it was a mediocre date, you still go in for a kiss. And not a kiss on the forehead, not a kiss on the cheek, you go for a kiss on the lips. Do you get
Definitely
it?
agree. Oh, definitely agree. Yeah, I've lived it, and you see it, and seeing. I know when you talk about mediocre dates, one girl who I dated for a little while, we didn't get along for our date, and we actually went to 4 different places, and in the day, and it was like each one, it wasn't bad, but it was just like there's nothing here, there's nothing, and at the end of the night, it was just like, all right, well, drop you off, see you later. Went in to kiss. Like, I may as well just, it's like, whatever, just kiss her. And it was like, kiss, kiss,
Nice, yeah.
door kicks down, we're inside, you know what I mean? And next thing you know, we dated for a year. I'm like, what the hell? So it's the spark. It starts the fire, right? With that kiss, or it's not there. And you don't waste your time going, well, kiss her on the 3rd date or the 5th date.
You don't have time to waste.
None at all.
You don't have time to waste. We are here on this earth for such a limited time, and some of us have a lot less time than others. You don't have time trying to figure out if you should spend more time with somebody, find out right away. One of the things that I used to do on a first date is that I would bring up the topic of conversation, Eskimo kisses. You know how Eskimos kiss? They rub noses. Now, I know this is a folk tale that from what I understand, they don't actually do that. But it's a common element, it's in popular culture, it's an easy and fun conversation to get into. So, I would be talking about Eskimo kisses on a first date.
Okay.
And then at some point, I might do something like, let's say we were at a coffee shop or in a pub. I would get up and say, okay, I got to go to the washroom. I would get up and then I would lean my face into her face. And this is right after we had the conversation of Eskimo kisses. And I would see if she would lean her face into mine and rub noses. If she rubbed noses, after the nose rub, I would smile. I would still hold my face right there. I would smile and I would say, that was nice. Then I would give her a quick kiss. If instead of going for the Eskimo nose kiss, she went in for the kiss because I put my face right there and she went in for the kiss, I would say something like, well, I was actually just hoping you would rub my nose, but that's even better. And I would make my way to the washroom. And it's like at that point, okay, we've gotten the first kiss over with.
Right.
So at this point, if we're holding hands, if we're snuggling, if we're kissing again, listen, once you've passed a certain point, you can always continue on from there.
Right.
Pending the context, as long as it's within the same first date.
Right.
Okay? So always go for that kiss on a first date, no matter how bad it is. Because that first date could turn into a passionate makeout section. It could even turn into sex. Remember, there's no point in going on a date and trying to ignore the sexual dynamic between a man and a woman. Otherwise, what are you there for?
And this is the thing where, societally we always get, and I always talk about conditioning. We're conditioned to act like, well, we're not here for sex, or we're not here to be sexual. And it's not necessarily just, having sex, and it's like, well, if we're on a date, it's clearly to see if we both are compatible to do more than say, hey, what's up to one another.
Let's also remember that a lot of the traditions and a lot of the rules that we learn about dating, we learn when we're teenagers.
Right.
And the rules for dating when you're teenagers are different from the rules when you're dating as adults.
Yes.
Now, teenagers are encouraged to do things like group dating, where you're not really just one-on-one, one boy, one girl. You're a group of friends going out with another group of friends. There's a reason that that's encouraged, because it's safer. There's less chances of any one person trying to force themselves on any other one person.
Right.
And it's a group dynamic. Everybody's watching everybody else, so there's that social peer pressure that keeps people from having sex. Why don't we want teenagers to have sex? First of all, depending on their age, it may be illegal. They might be too young. The second reason we don't want them to have sex is that, by and large, teenagers are not very responsible. And the last thing you want is unwanted pregnancies. The last thing you want is sexually transmitted diseases because, oh, I didn't want to wear the condom. Now, when you're dealing with an adult can take responsibility for themselves. If they want to take the risks, that's their prerogative.
Right.
When you're dealing with teenagers, they're not necessarily at a point where they have the maturity to understand that there are consequences to their actions.
Sure.
So what happens when a teenager grows up, becomes a young man, becomes a young woman, those rules of dating that were forced onto them as teenagers, now they're trying to get into adult relationships that involve dynamics that they've never been prepared for.
Still using those same dynamic of the younger days. Right.
So when you're on a first date, you have an obligation to go for that kiss, if for no other reason, because a lot of the guys who are studying material like this don't have very much experience. So the only way to get experience is to actually just go ahead and do it. If you sit there and wait for the girl to give you permission to kiss her, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
No, I run a program for adult male virgins, and this is part of the problem. They just never went for it. You know, and I'm not saying just to grab her and kiss her, although sometimes, depending on the context, that can work. But if you're looking at her eyes, and you're looking at the other eye, and then you're looking at the lips, and the eye, the lips, the eye, the lips, and she's looking back at you, and you get that little thing on the inside that says, "Lean in and kiss her, stupid."
Do it.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
So if it's the end of the date and you're not planning to have sex, or the sex just hasn't happened yet, and you haven't even held hands, you still go in for the kiss on the lips. At the very least, you get a kiss, and if the worst case scenario, if she backs off and says, "No, I don't want to kiss you," well, you know not to waste your time trying to go for a second date with her.
And even if you don't get the kiss, I think, because in my own case, I do recall very vividly having that thought, eyes, okay, and then as I leaned in to kiss her, I remember she grabbed my face. She grabs my face and goes, "What are you doing?" And then it's kind of like, whatever. And she was like, "Oh no, I told you I don't kiss on the first date, but I had a great time." And it was really funny because she was older than me, and I was like, and I was embarrassed. I was, there was all the feelings of, I went for something, and the odd thing was, she was like, "But I had a great time. I'll talk." And I kind of was like, "What the?" And I pulled away and was like, "All right, well, see you later." And I rush off, and that particular girl I ended up talking to again, and we ended up, cultivating a relationship probably about a year later. But what I realized from that was, it was the worst case scenario is she's going to say no, and you're going to move on with your life.
But there's still some good that comes out of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and not just the life experience you have that you can laugh about now, or that you can relate to other people who go through the same thing. Here's the thing. When you lean in for that kiss, even if she backs off and says, "No, not yet," you have still made a very outward sign that your intent is for this interaction,
very clear.
This dynamic to become sexual at some point.
Right. I'm not trying to be your friend.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what you say to them. And which again goes back to that we don't have time to, and it's not saying we don't have to have any female friends, but if that's not what you're in this for, don't become that just to appease her.
No, not at all. Which brings us to another rule for first dates. If she starts talking about her problems, the line that I teach all guys to say is, "Stop. I'm not your therapist. When you're with me, we have fun." This halts her ability to categorize you as just a friend. There's no way you're going to be an emotional cookie man if every time she goes into talking about her problems, "Stop. I'm not your therapist. When you're with me, we have fun." And then you go do something fun. Now, if she's having a real crisis in life, something that's life or death, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not in a good mood. My grandmother's in the hospital. She had a heart attack the other night, and we really don't know. Listen, if she's in that type of mindset, look, even I got a heart. So I'm going to say, at that point, I would say, you know what? Rather than be here, why don't we go to the hospital and you can visit your grandmother? And I would actually take her to the hospital. She'll go upstairs. She'll visit her grandmother, and then she'll feel a little bit better that she got to spend some time. She'll spend a half hour there, and then we'll go off and we'll go do something else, or the date should end right there. If she's not in the mindset of looking to connect with somebody, just end it. Just end it right there. You're not there to be a therapist. You're not there to entertain her. Okay? That's another rule here. Don't be an entertainment monkey. Guys are going out on these first dates and, I want to do something fun. Yes, you want to do something fun together. But it's not your job to entertain her.
Right.
You become entertainment monkey. Entertainment monkey are clowns. Clowns do not get laid with the type of women that they really want, because they're clowns. No woman has ever looked at a clown and said, "Fuck me, clown, fuck me." How do you define a successful date?
It depends on what the outcome was, what the outcome is that you had.
There's only one outcome that makes a date successful. Did you have sex?
Wow, that's
it. When a guy comes up to me, "Frank, I went out on a date and it was really great. It was really wonderful. We talked, we connected. It was fantastic." I say, "Great. Did you have sex?" He says, "No." I say, "Then it wasn't a successful date."
Really?
Yeah, really.
Now, what's your thinking on that?
Okay, look, you go out on a date and everything goes so amazingly well. Well, when things are going well between a man and a woman, they want to have sex with one another. That's the ultimate sign that they want to be together. What is the second greatest compliment a man can give a woman? Sex. What is the second greatest compliment that a woman can give a man? Sex. What's the one thing a woman doesn't give to a male friend? Sex. Why? She doesn't like him enough. So if two people are on a date, they have the most amazing time and they connect well, what else is there? What are you waiting for? Find out if you're sexually compatible. Because there's always going to be that missing element. There's always going to be that question of, well, we were together, but we weren't intimate. So then there's something missing here. You don't have a full relationship yet.
See, I don't know. I mean, I would definitely look at that as not necessarily a lack of success, but not as sex as success, but intimacy, which is a different thing entirely, if that's what you were looking for.
Look, if you're looking for emotional intimacy, you can get that from friends. You can get that from people you're not sexually interested in. You're going on a date. You want to have a friend? Is that why you're going on a date, so you can make friends? Or are you going because you want to establish something more intimate? Whether it be a sexual relationship or a deeper, emotionally healthy relationship that includes sex as a part of it.
That I can agree with.
Okay, that's why when somebody comes to me and says, "I had the most amazing date," did it end in sex? No. Well, then you haven't really established that it was a most amazing. Go out a second time, go out a third time. Once you have sex, that's when I believe that, okay, now you're potentially compatible. But until you have sex, you have no clue whether or not you're really compatible.
That I agree with, Fred.
All you know is that, okay, we get along. Well, you get along with your friends, but you don't want to have sex with them.
That I can agree with. I mean, I think, your standard for a successful date has to be higher than, hey, we spoke.
Exactly.
Without a doubt, and you have to have a point where you say, okay, this was good. I want to do this again.
And that actually relates to the following. One of the 5 criteria on how you judge a location for a first date is the criteria of sexability. Can you have sex in that location? So obviously, if you go back to your place, in theory, if you live alone or you have your own private space within your place, you can have sex there. You're trying to make sure that the third location on any first date has the opportunity for sexability. If the third location on a first date has no place where the two of you could be intimate and have sex, don't make it the third location on a first date. Or, if you have more than 3 locations on a first date, make sure that your last location has the sexability factor.
Right.
So let's say you want to take a girl, go to mini golf. Okay, you're going to go to the mini golf range and you're going to play mini golf. Do you know any place on the mini golf range where you could have sex? Now, maybe you know somebody who works there, or maybe you used to work there and you know all the hidden closets and you know all the, you know, the bushes and you know all the
mini putt house on the
mini
left.
putt house.
Right, yeah, yeah.
You know, if you know those places and you know that you could have sex if the opportunity arises, that's what makes it a great location at the end of a first date.
Right.
My personal philosophy is every location you should go to on a first date should be really close to where you live. If possible, take her to your place right away at the beginning of a date. Now, even if you bring her to your place at the beginning of a date, you still have to think in terms of 3 locations. So, when I would have a first date at my house, I would bring her in. First thing I would do is I would give her the tour. I would then end up in the kitchen. And while in the kitchen, I would put on a stupid chef's hat, I would put on an apron, and I would keep the conversation topics relative to things like what you studied, what you wanted to do for a career, what you do in a career. And I have her sitting at the kitchen table where all she can face is me in the stupid chef's hat in front of the stove, in front of the fridge, and, you know, in front of the sink, you know, cooking and doing whatever, preparing dinner.
Right.
The second location. You know what? This was a really great meal. Let's go for a walk. So we take off the chef's hat, take off the apron, put on my jacket, put on my hat. We go for a walk around the block, maybe to the local park. And we sit on the swings. This time we're talking about topics of conversation like best childhood memories. You know, and favorite TV shows when you were a kid. What cartoons did you like to watch? Favorite stuffed animals. This puts a person at ease, makes them remember some of the best times, makes them feel young again. At that point, you say, hey, you know what? Let's get back. I want to show you something really neat at my place. Now, she's already been at your place, so there's no problem in going back.
Right.
When you go back to your place, you bypass the kitchen. You don't even go in there. In my case, I would take them to the living room. And my living room was decorated for seduction. The walls were painted Viking blue with white clouds, and I made the white clouds be in the shape of certain things like cartoon characters and body parts and continents and land masses. And I would say, what does that look like up there? What does that look like up there? Now I'm getting her into a very imaginative state. I'll give her the matches and I'll say, hey, there's some candles on the shelves here. Go light the ones you want. Each one is labeled and it says what scent it is. So she lights the candles, I turn down the lights, put on some music. Now at this point, we start talking about things like, you know, times when you felt really good. You know, times when you've really felt like you were totally found your own. Here's something very seductive. Figure out what emotions you want her to experience on a first date. And find a story from your own life where you experienced that same emotion and relate it to her. She'll have to experience that emotion in order to relate to your story. So let's say you want her to feel a sense of deep intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go into a time in my own life. Let's see, when did I feel deep intrigue? I remember when I was in university, and there was a magic show happening for the university students. And, you know, university students being what they are, you know, trash talking the magician and so on, and, you know, trying to upstage him. But I really liked what he was trying to do. And he actually pulled off an amazing show where everybody was applauding at the end. And I just wanted to know, like first of all, why does he do this? And how does he do this? I want to know what were the tricks that he was performing, how he performed those tricks. So I went and I talked to the guy. And I really wanted to know, and I started asking him, so listen, it was a great show. I really loved it. I'm sorry you had to go through that thing with some of those idiots in the crowd. Why do you do what you do? And I went into this whole thing of such deep intrigue. And I got him to talk about how his grandfather was a magician, his dad was a magician, and this was a family tradition for him. and how being brought up in this way was a deep connection and a lot of family values here. Now I've got all these things happening. I've got all these conversation topics coming up because I can take this story and go into a story now about family values.
Right.
I can take this story and go into other experiences at colleges and universities. I can take this experience and go into the theme of various shows that a person's gone to see and concerts. By relating my experience of deep intrigue, and I know I haven't done a very good job here because I'm not getting into the specifics.
No, but I totally dig what you're saying.
Okay? She's going to go through that type of emotion.
Absolutely.
And remember, at this point, because I've already set it up, I've probably already done the Eskimo kiss with her while we were having dinner. So by the time I get to this point and we're in deep intrigue, I can go in for a kiss, if I want to. Normally what I would do is that I would turn on the disco ball would start turning, I have a light shining, there's lights, and I'd say, dance with me. And I would dance with her, and while dancing, I would lean in and give her a kiss if I haven't already kissed her at that point.
I think it's a very powerful thing is when you get that first, you said getting that first out of the way, whatever it is. And, I didn't necessarily have my place wasn't, I had things in my home that were female friendly. It's always, I learned that from one of my favorite comedians is like, I have kids. So at my house, there's toys all over the place. Why? Because there's kids there. So, and no one thinks it's weird. Mm-hmm. So if you have female, in my house, there's things that females like. I got a certain kind of liquor because I know girls like it. I have certain kind of sheets because I know girls like them. I have certain kind of pillows on my couch because I know girls like them.
Exactly.
It's not for me. It's because and no one thinks there's anything wrong with that.
That's right.
And I always thought it was always something, you said this with escalating. I always like to either bring a girl to my house for the first date or go to her house before the date even started. Oh, I got to go get something, hold up or come meet me at my house. No, whatever. Because that way, like you just said, you've been here, you see my house and nothing happened. So now it's not oh my God, he's trying to bring me home just to get, it's like, oh, we're just going to his house to hang, to continue whatever we're doing. So whenever you want to go back there or go back to her house, you're just continuing. There's no red flag that goes off in their head. So I can, from personal experience, I can kind of dig that vibe.
Mm-hmm. The thing that guys have to remember when they go on a first date, if she likes you enough to go on a first date, she already likes you. You don't have to continue to try to impress her.
Right.
Okay? All you got to do at that point is really connect with her. And in my philosophy, find out what kind of a relationship you can have with her.
Right.
In the other episode, in the other program we did, we talked about categorizing women into different possible categories of one-night stand, sex buddy, and all the different types of relationships. When I'm on a first date, I'm asking her questions to qualify her to figure out what kind of a relationship I could have with her, if I even want a relationship with her.
Right.
So those are the types of things that are going to be coming up. The different topics of conversation should be related to the men's emotional needs, women's emotional needs, and sometimes just a fun game. Okay, we can play one of those games right now, okay? A first date fun game.
Okay.
Here it is, the love-hate game. All right, you're going to pick a category, and you're going to tell me what you love, what you hate. All right, I'll go first. Day of the week. I love Fridays, I hate Mondays. Now you go for one. Seasons.
Oh, love summer. Hate winter.
Ooh, okay, now you pick a category for me.
Sports.
Sports. I hate football, I love professional wrestling. Now, we can go back and forth for a couple of minutes.
Right.
I'll find out stuff about you, you can find out stuff about me, and it's not these specific things that matter.
No.
But the conversations that come from it. So if you told me there, you said you hated winter?
Yes.
Okay, well, what do you hate about winter?
I'm not a cold weather guy.
So traveling to Alaska might not be necessarily one of the best trips you can go to.
I would not really like to do that, thank you.
So I already know that staying away from things like skiing, skating,
right,
ice fishing,
right,
probably not your thing.
Yeah, not going to be a fun time.
So I already know to stay away from those conversation topics and stick to the things you would like. Do you see how that works?
Absolutely.
So right now we're just getting into a very fun thing, back and forth, and I'm finding out things about you. I'm going to give you one of the games that I came up with to go on dates with. And this has actually served me very well in speed dating of all things.
Okay.
Here we go. If life was a banana split. Are you familiar with what a banana split is?
I am.
Okay. If life was a banana split, what part of the banana split would you be and why?
I'd be the cherry. Shoot.
Okay, why? Why would you be the cherry?
Because that's the top.
Yeah. Now, in this one question that's fun, that's silly, that's imaginative, I just found out something about you. That
Absolutely.
you like being on top. You like being the top. So you ask these type of questions, you're completely staying away from the whole thing of, well, what do you do for a living?
Which doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't, because you ask someone, well, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a lawyer. Well, do they love what they do?
Right.
Or are they doing it just for the money? You don't know.
Right.
And those type of things don't give you any indication as to whether or not someone is going to be good for you in a relationship.
Yeah, they're not value marked.
Exactly. However, I know that you're a cherry. I know that you like to be on top, that you are the top, and you have to be the top. That gives me an idea that, if a girl's going to get into a relationship with him, he's going to be the one to lead. He's going to be the one on top. He's going to be the one in charge.
Right.
I just picked up all of that from you by finding out one question, one answer, what would you be and why?
Right. And the power of that also comes from, people speak in metaphor.
Exactly.
And knowing someone's metaphors allows you to speak to them very easily.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
So, if the universe was a vegetable garden, what vegetable would you be and why?
I'm like, I stay away from vegetables. Squash.
Now, why would you be squash?
Because it's so diverse.
Okay, so I already know that right now you think of yourself as diverse. Whether or not you actually are is a different story.
Right.
But I know you think of yourself as diverse.
Right.
And from there, I know that diversity is a value of yours, and I should take the conversation to something related to diversity. Maybe the fact that, we live in Canada here. Canada is a multicultural society where you have people of all diverse colors and races and ethnics and cultures and religions.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. And now I've already got something that you already have some sort of interest in, and we can go right into that.
And then also you get those hot words, outside of metaphors that people use.
Exactly.
Whatever it might be. I know in my slang and my jargon, I say stuff like fresh or dig. You talk back to me that way, and it's instantly going to make me more comfortable. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that was fresh. Oh, so okay, I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And so that's another thing that I kind of draw from those same questions when I use those.
Let's go into one more here, okay? One more thing that you can talk about on a first date. I call this the $3 million question.
$3 million question?
$3 million question. Now, this is if you reach a point on the date where you really like the person.
Okay.
And you're starting to think whether or not you can build a future with this person. Here it is. What would you do with your first million? What are you going to do with your second million? And what are you going to do with your third million? This, more than anything, is going to give you an idea of what a person's priorities are.
Right.
So if what I'm hearing is, my first million, I'm going to travel the world. That's a lofty goal. With my second million, I think I want to travel some more. And then when I asked her, what's your third million? She says, I want to travel some more. I actually had a girl give me that. I want to travel, travel, travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check, please. That sort of thing.
Cut and run.
Right. However, if a girl were to tell me something like, with my first million, I would pay off all my debts. I would put some money away, for my kids' tuition if I ever have kids. And I would buy my parents a house. All right, so I've already got an idea of where her priorities are. Well, with my second million, I would probably just invest that and live off the dividends and live off the grid, which is to live on a piece of land where you have a well for water, you have solar panels for electricity, and you pretty much live as independently as possible by growing your own food. Mm-hmm. With the third million, I would start a charitable organization because I believe in this sort of thing. And, okay, this particular girl I'm talking to is already thinking for her future.
Different category of woman.
Exactly.
Right.
So the next step in all this is that whatever questions, whatever games you want to play on a first date, whether they be idea games, the $3 million question, the banana split question, you have to have your own answers prepared for those as well.
Right.
Because the question's going to come back to you.
And best foot forward is your goal.
Exactly. So it gives you both the opportunity to best present yourself and to find out, are we compatible? Look, we're already here. We're already on a first date. We're already willing to give each other a chance. let's not screw this up.
So any last thoughts in our definitive guide to first dates?
I think that the bottom line is that you have to fall in love with the idea of first dates. First dates can be an amazing experience. And yes, there are some bad first date experiences. You know, everybody has their horrible first date stories. But that's a good thing. Because it's better to have a bad first date story than to have a bad got married, had kids, and then got divorced story. Be open to first dates. If somebody wants to set you up on a date, say yes. If somebody comes up to you and says, listen, I got a friend that I really think would get along with you and I want to set you guys up on a blind date, say yes. First dates can be fun. The goal of it is not to have fun. A successful date means you end up having sex. The goal of a date is to figure out what category or role a person can play in your life, but they can be fun. Enjoy, love the idea of going out on a first date. I guess the way to say this, I know this is probably not the best way to articulate it. I haven't even said this in my program, but I'm going to say it here now. The person that you are on a first date is the person you should strive to be all the time. Because on a first date, you're putting your best foot forward. On a first date, you're trying to take everything that was negative that happened to you and to survive it and to learn from it and apply it and pass it on. On a first date, you are truly making an effort to be at your best and to truly connect with another human being.
Mm-hmm. Fresh. Well, as you started out, you know, what to say, where to go, how to act.
That's it.
Courtesy of Frank B. Kermit in the men's room.
I really enjoy coming here talking to you.
Man, it's always a pleasure to have you.
Be well, sir.
Guys, I'm Mark Sparks. This is the Men's Room interview series. See you next time.